Okay, so good afternoon, everyone. Actually, today is our first lecture for modern analytical, pharmaceutical analytical techniques, which we are going to cover. So, whatever the basic topics which required for analytical techniques, so that has been introduced to you people in one of the zone by Dr. Kunjan Bodiwala. So, sir might have taught you several techniques which are available in this. Modern analytical techniques. So under this, we can categorize so many pharmaceutical techniques such as chromatography, flame photometry, IR spectroscopy, NMR spectroscopy, mass spectroscopy, etc., etc. So and also including chromatography. So chromatography is a huge technique. I mean to say there are several types of chromatographic techniques are available to purify the compound, to separate the compound, and to get the purity of the compound, as well as sometimes it is also useful to for both the purposes. What I mean to say, for qualitative purposes as well as for quantitative purposes. So friends, that chromatographic technique we are going to learn today under this your subject mat 101 E. So one of the major concept behind is what are the syllabus, because syllabus is generally required to learn and understand the several other topics from your, I mean to say, this concepts. So several chromatographic techniques are available, just say in which we will be learning what is the principle, what is the apparatus, instrumentation, what are the several types of the instrumentations, and the things which are available for paper chromatography, for thin layer chromatography, ion exchange chromatography, column chromatography, and some other techniques. You might have been already introduced to some of these techniques, right? I'm not sure, saying that you are learning these techniques for the first time in your life. No, already you have been educated through several types of these techniques during your, maybe I'm not remembering, but maybe third year or fourth year of BPharm. Okay, so when I was studying my B Farm in the year 2012, so at that time we have studied this some of these techniques in our seventh semester and eighth semester. But now these techniques you people might have learned during your fifth or sixth semester. So maybe not in the third year as well. I'm not sure because I'm not taking any class in B Farm. But yes, these techniques are more important to separate and purify, right? So some of the techniques are there, but although there are many techniques which are not covered, for example, flash chromatography, that is not there in your syllabus. But yes, we will go through this because flash chromatography is one of the important chromatography, one of the flash chromatograph, that is the instrument which is available at our Atal Incubation Center, and also maybe the same is available in QLM, quality in the laboratory of quality and assurance, where there is flash chromatography is available. So using, we will also introduce to you people regarding this flash chromatography. These are the several books regarding which basically we can learn the several other uh, types of, I mean to say, you can also go through these of the books, right? So I will prefer that if you go by Canal or say PD Sethi or some other reference books, so they are available for your references. Fine. Then the next concern is the separation techniques. So there are so many types of separation techniques are available. Okay, so maybe decantation is one of that technique. Just if we know there is some portion, some solution is there. One of them is composed of solid and liquid, and if we remove the liquid, then we can have complete decantation. तो जैसे हम चाय बनाते हैं, चाय बनाते टाइम पे हम थोड़ा फिल्ट्रेशन करते हैं, और फिर so that is also another technique, that we are only taking the milk which contains solubilized tea, or then that tea is basically obtained from either from the leaves, tea leaves, or it is obtained from granules. So that is also kind of filtration that you people used to do in your daily life. जिनको चाय पीने की आदत है, उनको filtration, और वो लोग जो चाय बनाते हैं, so that they are doing this kind of daily, I mean to say, routine filtration in their life. Centrifugation, this is another methodology for which we will require centrifugal. I mean to say centrifugational motor or centrifugation device. So if we have this centrifuge at our laboratory, then we can perform this uh, I mean to say centrifugation. Acha. Then another concern is once we have this centrifuge evaporation. So evaporation is also another kind of technique where we can do uh, evaporate our kind of this instrumentation. Means if we have for evaporation, they say where we are doing. So generally, the salt preparation, we know that salt, sodium chloride, which is a table salt, and without that we will not enjoy our food. So for preparation of such kinds of salt. So what is the source of table salt? So say, source of such kind of table salt is seawater. So if we take some quantity of seawater and let the water evaporate, then we will get the salt. So that way, जैसे आप टाटा नमक खाते हो या फिर और किसी भी कंपनी का नमक खाते हो, तो उसमें भी they are doing evaporation for the preparation of sodium chloride. Okay. Crystallization. This is another separation technique. And majorly, chemistry people are doing crystallization because they are trying to crystallize the compound by dissolving in the hot water or hot ethanol. तो थोड़ा उसका temperature बढ़ाते हैं, फिर temperature कम करते हैं. So once they are if they are reducing the temperature, then they will get crystals, and these crystals are considered as a pure form. So majorly crystals are uh, they are this kind of pure forms. They say you are already aware about the several crystals. I mean to say, let us say the sugar cubes or the sugar which or જેને ગુજરાતીમાં આપણે કહીએ તો ખાંડ. So that is also made up of white crystals, and that crystals we are using as a sugar or as a sweet material in preparation of various kinds of sweets and whatsoever they are. Okay. Another kind of technique is distillation. So distillation is another technique where we are doing the distillation purpose. So chemistry people will be also doing some. When you will join the lab, then you will come to know how to perform distillation and what is the several other flask and reflux and condensations. These are some of the processes which so, okay, that is distillation, and not all also not only that, but natural products. I do not know whether any one of you from pharmacognosy, so they will be also doing distillation. Because if we want to obtain the abstract extract of particular leaves or some roots or some other bark, then in that case also we are doing distillations with the natural the parts of either with the natural these parts of the natural products or parts of some trees or leaves. So whatsoever the distillation is also being performed in these circumstances. Then it comes to another topic which is called separating funnel. So आपने separating funnel से extraction किया होगा, right? During your this majorly organic chemistry, you might have done this. I mean to say आप सॉलिड लिक्विड और सॉलिड का जो एक्सट्रैक्शन करते हैं तो लिक्विड लिक्विड एक्सट्रैक्शन भी पॉसिबल लिक्विड सॉलिड भी होता है बट आई एम मेजरली talking about liquid liquid extraction, so that you are doing with the help of separating funnel. Sometimes people used to call it as sap funnel, so there is no issue with what you are pronouncing, but separating funnel तो आप जैसे वो you are taking, let us say separating funnel, you are taking water, you are taking ethyl acetate. So ethyl acetate will come at the bottom, and sorry, no, ethyl acetate will be at the top and water will be at the bottom. So that way, if our one of the substances which is soluble in somehow reaction mixture is there, and we know that our compound in which we are interested, that is insoluble in water but soluble in ethyl acetate, so we can separate that compound from the reaction mixture using ethyl acetate. तो पहले हम वाटर को निकाल देंगे, फिर इथाइल एसीटेट को हम इवोपरेट कर लेंगे, कंडेंस कर लेंगे. So that is also a kind of separating funnel that we people can do as a part of the separation. Fractional distillation. You know that if you want to travel from one place to other place, you will require the vehicle, and vehicle का जो fuel है, that is basically petroleum products. Okay, so these petroleum products are also obtained from fractional distillation. જેને ગુજરાતીમાં કહીએ તો વિભાગીય નિસ્યંદન, right? So that fractional distillation is doing based on what? So based upon the boiling points of different products, diesel, petrol, kerosene, and finally we called it as asphalt. Okay, so all they have different. I mean to say that boiling points, and depending upon these boiling points, the separation is achieved. So that separation is termed as fractional distillation. This distillation, it is a kind of normal distillation just like this, which is that which we discussed. And fractional distillation is based upon the distillation separation according to that boiling points. Another technique that is called sublimation. Sublimation is a technique where once we have any solid, so its conversion into vapor, that is called evaporation. Sorry, solid is there, but it conversion into this liquid form. That phenomena is called as melting. So melting is a phenomena for this. Okay, so solid is converted into liquid, that is called melting, but liquid is converted into gas form, so that is called evaporation. But if a solid is directly converted into vapor, so that is called sublimation. I repeat, if a solid is converted into liquid, so that phenomena is called as melting. If a liquid is converted into gaseous form in the vapor form, then it is called as evaporation. But if a solid is converted directly into the vapor form, so then it is called as sublimation. Okay, so these are the several techniques for separation, for to separate the compounds to which are mixed with each other in the form of certain mixture. Most prominent technique which we have to learn and that is widely used and easily that is also available, that is called chromatography. Okay, so that we have to understand for our. Okay, so these are the separation techniques. The point is that there may be different targets of isolation depending upon the unknown compound which are responsible for their biological activity, the classes of natural products with organisms. So they are generally like this. And why we want to purify this compound, why we want to separate them? We want to separate them because we want to get sufficient amount of chemical characterization. Because we know that if you once we have a particular compound, then we need to also purify them. And after purification, we want to characterize them for using our proton NMR, for carbon NMR, or IR infrared spectroscopy, or sometime using any other kind of spectroscopy. So in all these kinds of circumstances, we need to chemically characterize the compound. पर उसके लिए आपको sufficient amount चाहिए. For example, if you want to perform proton NMR, so for 400 megahertz NMR, at least you will require 4 or 5 milligram of the compound. If you want to perform carbon NMR, so you will require at least 15 mg, 15 milligram, 15 mg of the compound. If you want to perform mass spectroscopy, then at least 1 mg is sufficient. Even sometimes you want to perform other purification techniques such as your HPLC, HPTLC. उसके लिए भी there will be limit depending upon the method which you are adopting. There is minimum quantity of the compound is required. So this way, it is basically to generate the sufficient amount for further biological testing. So this is another use because if you want to synthesize the compound, then generally 10 milligram of the compound is suggested to prepare for biological evaluation. Just like if you want to develop a certain new molecule against coronavirus disease 2019, so in that cases, you should have at least 10 milligram of the compound which you are going to synthesize. आपके दिमाग में ही वो ख्याल होना चाहिए कि whatever the compound I am synthesizing, at least 10 milligram of the compound should be synthesized. So that is also, and to generate the sufficient amount for biological testing, उसमें भी chromatography is doing its application. And some other compound which are responsible for biological activity, that is same, and chemical study of an organism for its secondary metabolite and chemical profile. So for that metabolism purpose is also sometimes we are doing just we know that you will be learning several stability analytical techniques, especially if the farm persons with farm quality assurance and also pharmaceutics. So you might whatever the formulation you may develop, so uska bhi aap stability study karo whether some kind these kinds of compounds are stable at a certain so and so temperature, so and so condition, so and so relative humidity. So at that time, if it has undergone degradation, then in what circumstances are you people going to characterize the metabolites? So secondary metabolites, if you want to characterize, so for this purpose also you need to deal with such kinds of compounds. And another property, which is that means to say the purity of the compound. So purity of the compound is also more important because if the compounds are not pure, then we cannot claim that compound is pure. So if that compound is not 99% pure, that compound is only 90% pure, or that compound is 80% pure. So in that circumstances, this is basically this kind of compound cannot be given for biological activity. Okay, if you refer the guidelines of American Chemical Society and any compound which you are synthesizing, whether it is a natural product or whether it is a small molecule, so it should have purity more than 90%. I mean to say 90% purity should be there. ओके सो तभी वो आपका पब्लिकेशन जो है आपका जो कंपाउंड है उसको कंसीडर करेंगे फॉर दिस प्योरिटी पर्पसेस ओके बाकी सारे आलतू फालतू जर्नल में आप अपना रिसर्च वर्क पब्लिश करने जाओगे यू विल लर्निंग that how to publish a research paper in your from semester 3 and 4. Okay, so that they if they might not have specified the purity criteria at 80% or 75%, then you may go ahead with these kinds of purity as well. But according to ACS, American Chemical Society, and at least 90% of the purity should be there. And that purity will be claimed by your HPLC, high performance liquid chromatography. So वो प्योरिटी जब होगी तभी आपको उसका क्रोमेटोग्राम जो होगा वो आपको देना पड़ेगा. You will go for publishing of the paper. If you don't give, then they will reject your paper. Okay, no, your work is third class one. It cannot be accepted in a good quality journal such as this. Okay, so in that time, chromatography is also useful to claim the purity of compound. That yes, whatever the compound we have synthesized, that is having more than 99.99% of purity. Okay, so for characterization is must, and also for biological evaluation. If your compound is impure, then uska matlab ye hoga ki maybe the purity or the activity of the compound is because of the impurity which is present in your compound, present in your reaction mixture. So under this circumstances also your compound should be highly pure. If biological activity is, that is one of the major concern for this. X-ray crystallography. As you know that you have learned the Bragg's law and where you have visited the snail's law principle, right? Snail's principle. So you know all these things regarding XRD, X-ray diffraction. So here also in X-ray diffraction, we need to learn the concepts of this chromatography because XRD में जो crystal use होता है that crystal should be highly pure. एक छोटा सा क्रिस्टल है that is used for your purpose of uh, XRD, X-ray diffraction, because that is the technique which will allow us to predict the structure of the compound. NMR भी है, IR भी है, mass भी है, but with the help of several coordinates, we can come to know about the absolute structure of the compound. Okay, so for this purpose, XRD, X-ray diffraction or X-ray crystallography are useful. Okay, so these are the some of the why we should study, what should we study, and why the purity is a concern for several kinds of technical paper or several kinds of this aspects of chromatography. Okay. So it is suggested that approach level depends upon the purity of the compound required. For example, if you want to submit your compound for NMR, nuclear magnetic resonance spectroscopy, so your compound should be more than 95% pure. Okay, but for majorly, this is for minor compound in the extract, but for major compound, usually pure compound is sufficient for characterization by comparison with the standards. That is less number of purification. Here I wish to say that this is one compound, E and coron 3-oxo 1617 diol. So there were two research publications have been reported. In one publication, they have just given the melting point. आपको पता है, you people have done melting point in your organic chemistry lab. Okay, so one melting point was reported in one of these compound is this, that is more than 170 degrees Celsius. Okay, in other paper they have not reported melting point. Right? And in one paper, they have reported this angle of rotation, uh, optically active compound, that is 39.2 in chloroform. Okay, and in other paper, they have just given minus 73.1. Okay, so you people will be in dilemma that एक का बोला है melting point 170, तो दूसरे में तो melting point दिया ही नहीं है. एक में बोला है optical rotation about 40, तो दूसरे पेपर में optical rotation बोल दिया है minus 73 levorotatory substance. Okay, so that may be that either both the results are wrong or any of the result is wrong. Okay, so that can be one of the conclusion. In other words, one compound can be pure, other compound is impure. So this way, this uh, uh, I mean to say, different purity is also a concern when we are talking of the molecule. Okay, then this is for some of the other substances that biological sources, biological studies also purity of the compound is required. This is a concern where tanicolaids, which has been obtained from several marine cyanobacteria, and this is the name of that cyanobacteria, Gingiva majuscula. Fine. So naturally, the scuba divers are obtaining the such kinds of some material from the or sea marine materials at the bottom of the seas, and it is look like this. But the same substances contain this antifungal compound named as tanicolide, having this six-membered cyclohexanon kind of ring. So basically, this cyclic ester is also present in their structure, tanicolide. And if we want to separate this compound, so उसमें भी natural products है, so the person who are from pharmacognosy or from the natural product chemist, so they will try to extract these compounds from these marine materials, and then they shall try to process using chromatography. So chromatographic is a technique which can be used. So these are the antifungal tanicolaids which are obtained from these islands of Madagascar, and these some of the images of island of Madagascar have been shown over here. So our objective, so this was just to highlight you people that even if you want to abstract a particular compound from natural product, then chromatographic technique can be used to separate them. Okay, so various forms of these kinds of chromatographic techniques are available, whether uh, column chromatographic technique, liquid chromatographic techniques are there, pressure liquid chromatography, so that is also there, and planar chromatography, basically it is paper chromatography kind of, or sometimes TLC views were covered here. Okay, so let us go into depth of this column chromatography. So naturally there is a particular kind of column. So if I have one of the video, when we will cover in the column chromatography, I shall show those videos also through this online notes. So where I will show you that how the column chromatograph will look like. Okay, so there is a difference between the column chromatography maybe generally uh, you so chromatography is a particular I could not discuss previously with you, but there is a specific kind of terminology what is called chromatograph. So I'm sharing some of the whiteboard jam. The link shall be available in your chat box, and also I'm sharing my this entire screen, so those who could not see the Jamboard, they will be able to see this. Okay, so just chromatography. Chromatography is a technique which is from this chroma. Okay, so chroma उसमें भी आगे होता है chromatography. This is the basically term what is called chromatography. So it contains two words. I mean to say one of the word is called chroma and other word what is called as graph. Right? So chroma is generally basically there are these two terms have each and every meaning with each other. Although chromatography, which was previously studied by one of the scientists whose name is Stahl, so Stahl is the pioneer of this chromatographic techniques. If you refer this pharmacognosy by C.K. Kokate, you will come to know about the name of this scientist, who first of all has given this chromatography. Who tried for and उसने अपना किताब भी लिखा है. His book is also available that is on this chromatographic technique. So chroma basically it means a kind of color. So chroma, if we try to understand the meaning of chroma is color. And graphy is from another term that is called to graph. Means I mean to say that is from graph. And the dictionary meaning of graph that is to record. Okay. So this way, chromatography is to record that meaning of chromatography from chroma and graph is to record the color, to perceive the color, to identify the color. So that is the meaning of chromatography. Because initially, जो भी compound isolate होते थे, they are having color. So based upon that, the chroma technique is named as chromatography. But as of now, chromatography के बहुत सारे advantages हैं. Chromatography is having lot of types where it is also applicable to colorless compounds. So that way, this शुरू में उसका नाम था chromatography because it was applicable to colored compound. But now chromatography is also applicable to colorless compounds. Okay, so you will visit certain two terms. जैसे आप chromatography पढ़ोगे ना, तो you will come to know that chromatograph. So chromatograph. So this chromatograph is उसमें we have two separate terms. एक तो होता है chromatograph और दूसरा एक होता है जिसको बोलते हैं chromatogram. So there is a difference in these two words. If I say chromatograph, so that is the meaning as instrument. Chromatograph का मतलब होता है instrument and chromatogram का मतलब होता है. So if I say chromatograph, so that means a particular kind of instrument. And then if I say chromatogram, so chromatogram का मतलब होता है your basically chart, your this spectrum where you are showing retention of time versus purity, etc., etc. So that is there. Or some kind of plot X versus Y or of a particular chromatographic technique. So that is applicable in this terms. Okay, basically, I need to explain you people what is called chromatography. So chromatography is a technique to separate the compound. Chromatograph is an instrument used in chromatography, and chromatograph gram that is a kind of chart spectrum or a kind of graph for X versus Y. जैसे हम सेपरेट करते हैं ना retention time versus intensity. So that way, this is the chromatograph is itself instrument, but chromatogram is a kind of chart, X versus Y, or it is a kind of spectrum, or we can call it as a graph. So, okay, so graph का मतलब होता है you just don't try to mix it is alternatively. ग्राफ उधर है पर उसका मीनिंग ग्राफ नहीं है, उसका ग्राफ उसका मीनिंग है इंस्ट्रूमेंट. और क्रोमेटोग्राम itself is a graph. जैसे आपने प्लॉट किया है ना बहुत सारे logarithmic graphs or some other kinds of graphs X versus Y or whatsoever. So this way, these terms are completely different from each other, and you might have already learned this during your before. No issue. I just took a chance to interact with you people and to discuss with you regarding these three terminology. So I repeat, chromatography is a technique to separate these compounds. Chromatograph is an instrument to peruse in chromatography, and chromatogram is basically a kind of chart, a kind of you can call it as a graph or chart, graph, or some your spectrum where you are highlighting particular uh, retention time, the purity of the compound versus that of the intensity of the compound. Okay, so these are the things we need to understand before we go to particular this. I have several types of chromatography. Okay, so column chromatography. Several types of chromatography is available where preparative column chromatography is there. Flash chromatography, so that is utilizing a flash instrument. Vacuum liquid chromatography, so we are taking the help of this vacuum as a part of to create the force and using the vacuum pump. Ion exchange chromatography, so we are using ion exchange material. I mean to say, um, a negative or just or positive kind of ion exchangers are used in ion exchange. Gel chromatography, where certain gels are used, made up of whether cellulose or some other kinds of the gels which are available. So gel permeation chromatography and gel filtration chromatography, these kinds of chromatographic techniques are also used. Then pressure liquid chromatography. So depending upon the level of the pressure, the magnitude of the pressure, pressure liquid chromatography are classified. Low pressure chromatography, medium low pressure chromatography, medium pressure or high pressure kind of chromatography. The another kind of chromatography which is called normal phase chromatography and reverse phase chromatography. So these are the two types of the techniques where again I am going to present with the help of this whiteboard. That two types of chromatographic techniques we can call them as a generally. So what they are basically we can call them uh, there's as a reverse phase chromatography and this uh, normal phase chromatography. So two types of chromatographic techniques are generally available. So whether it is chromatography, two types are available. One of them is normal phase, other of them is reverse phase. And both the techniques have their separate, different meanings. Okay. So let me write one of the type of this chromatography, that is normal chromatography, and other what is called reverse phase chromatography. Normal है और दूसरा उसका जो है reverse phase. तो आपने ये पढ़ा ही होगा, but since just I am taking one chance to repeat the same thing, that normal chromatography is a technique where we have two things, right? Chromatography में always two phases are available. One of the phase is called mobile phase, although it has nothing to deal with the mobile, but फिर भी उसका नाम mobile इसलिए रखा है because it can move, it is not static, it is dynamic. So that's why its name is mobile phase. दूसरा जो स्टेज होता है क्रोमेटोग्राफी में उसको बोलते हैं स्टेशनरी फेज. सो आई एम जस्ट राइटिंग हियर एज यू अंडरस्टैंड एसपी एज स्टेशनरी फेज. So stationary phase is static in nature, although this stationary phase has nothing to deal with the stationary items which are available in the stationary store. Okay, so two kinds of phases are available. One is called mobile phase, other is called stationary phase. Mobile phase are the phases, and so in normal chromatographic technique, mobile phase is always non-polar. Okay, so friends, this in normal chromatographic technique, this mobile phase is always non-polar. But stationary phase is one of the phase which is in normal chromatographic technique that is always polar. Okay, if you want to remember this, how can you remember? I have a shortcut key to remember this. You can remember no, more, means. Now, chromatography where normal chromatography, mobile phase is always non-polar. This way you can remember chromatography, no, mo, no. Normal chromatography, mobile phase is non-polar. Or baki jo, if this is non-polar, then automatically this will become polar. Reverse phase chromatographic technique, where you can also remember mobile phase, and we have another phase, what is called stationary phase. Exactly इसका उल्टा है reverse phase, where if mobile phase was non-polar here, so in case of normal chromatography, but in case of reverse इसका एकदम जैसा नाम वैसा काम. If this is non-polar, so this will become polar. And if no mobile phase is polar, then in other case the stationary phase will be non-polar. Okay. So this way you can understand the difference. ये आपने GPAT और कहीं भी non GPAT आपने if you have appeared, this kind of questions they are asking. The reverse phase chromatographic techniques contain stationary phase, whether polar, non-polar, semi-polar, or none of the above. Then you need to आपने ये might have been done this. So that was the concept which I wish to teach you with respect to the types of chromatographic techniques, whether it is polar or non-polar. Another kind of technique that is called liquid-liquid chromatography. So liquid-liquid chromatography, counter current ion-anion chromatography is there. Planar chromatography, where generally we are doing whether thin layer chromatography or preparative high performance thin layer chromatography. So these are techniques which are also available. Thin layer chromatography, where especially you people have done after synthesis of your compounds in organic chemistry labs. So you are developing the thin layer TLC plates using silica gel and then drying in a oven, spotting with the help of your compound, whether it is starting material or your end product. You are making a core spot and then you are running the same thing into the mobile phase to check how what is the RF value of particular compound. तो ये लोग ये भी आप करके आए. Gas chromatographic technique. So we have one gas chromatograph at our LM College of Pharmacy in the quality assurance lab, as well as one additional gas chromatography instrument at our Atal Incubation Center, DICLMCB Foundation. Okay, so gas chromatography, gas liquid chromatography and gas solid chromatography are there. उसको short में बोलते हैं GC, gas chromatography. So these are also the techniques. They are useful for this kinds of chromatography. Okay, other vehicle chromatography techniques also can be classified depending upon the shape, whether it is column chromatography, planar chromatography. So they are classified. Column chromatography, flash, vacuum, open column. So they are these types of the one. Planar chromatography, where we can have TLC, HPTLC, OPLC, and centrifugal TLC. So these are the techniques which are basically planar chromatography, where the medium is stationary phase is generally flat in nature. So that way this is there. Depending upon the mode of separation, whether it adsorption, partition, or some other types, such as ion exchange, size exclusion, and affinity chromatography. So they are useful. Adsorption, so whenever one material is solid, other material is liquid, so at that time the phenomena, surfacial phenomena which will occur, that is called as adsorption. Partition, when both the molecules, both the phases are liquid in nature, so at that time the phenomena which is used, that is called partition. Ion exchange, depending upon the ion, whether it is an ion exchanger, cation exchanger. So these ion exchanger resins are also there available, which are used in these kinds of ion exchange chromatography. Size exclusion chromatography, दूसरा नाम है gel permeation chromatography. So depending upon the size of the molecules, sometimes this they are used. So largest molecule will elute first, and small molecule will come at the size. Based upon the molecular size, the compounds are separate. Affinity chromatography is upon whether it is antigen antibody interaction, whether it is protein drug receptor interaction, drug receptor antagonist interactions. They are generally identified. So that is also kind of this technique. And depending upon the basis of the mobile phase, whether it is liquid chromatography or gas chromatography, depending upon the nature of mobile phase, whether it is solid, liquid or gas, they are classified. जैसे कि गैस क्रोमेटोग्राफी में दो टाइप्स होते हैं, गैस लिक्विड क्रोमेटोग्राफी, gas solid chromatography. So gas liquid chromatography where stationary phase is liquid, and gas solid chromatography where stationary phase is solid in nature. So depending upon also the nature of mobile phase, these techniques are also classified. So some way these are some additional tables which are available, which will highlight the necessary these kinds of techniques. Okay, then it comes to adsorption chromatography. So basically, uh, adsorption where we are adsorbing the compounds, and majorly this chromatographic techniques are generally utilizing silica gel. Okay, तो आपने already silica gel use किया है. This silica is generally obtained from silicic acid. जो हम समंदर किनारे घूमने जाते हैं वहां पे जो सैंड होती है, that sand is also made up of this SiO2 silica. Okay, so that's आप और जब अब उसको थोड़ा प्योरीफाई फॉर्म में भी we can also use, and here in the lab which we are using the silica that is also having uh, SiO2 silica. So that is colorless compound is there, and depending upon the nature, these kinds of silica gels are also modified. Now how? आपने नाम सुना होगा silica gel G. So what does that G stands for? G stands for gypsum. Gypsum is basically જેને ગુજરાતીમાં આપણે કહીએ તો ચિરોડી. So that gypsum is basically a kind of binder which is used in such kind of silica. So that way, silica gel G is there. And silica can be also modified depending upon need, whether we can make it as a fluorescent, whether we can make it as a non-fluorescent. So silica में भी दूसरा एक टाइप के सिलिका होती है, उसको बोलते हैं सिलिका एंड जेल जीएफ. उसमें बहुत सारे टाइप्स होते हैं, 254 and so many others. Okay, so that kind of silica is useful for these purposes. Okay, and from there are several other techniques. ये देखो, now this is a more important feature of silica gel, because silica gel is widely used for making the silanol bonds, and it can make several hydrogen bonds with itself. It can make the hydrogen bond with exterior molecule. इसीलिए silica, we should never keep the bottle of silica gel open into the atmosphere, because once we make them open to the atmosphere, they will absorb the moisture from the atmosphere and they will lose their activity. So it is always suggested that silica gel should not be kept ओपन इनटू द एयर. और वो एक बार भी हम जैसे रात एक दिन में हम लैब में काम कर रहे हैं 5 बजे और 5:30 बजे घर जाने का टाइम हो गया, सिलिका जेल का जो डब्बा है उसका जो मुंह है, उसका जो ढक्कन है वो वैसे का वैसा खुला ही रह के हम घर चले गए. दूसरे दिन जब लैब में आते और देखते हैं तो दैट सिलिका विल, इफ इट इज आई मीन टू से विंटर, नॉट विंटर बट इफ इट इज लेट अस से monsoon, so it will absorb the moisture from the air, from the atmosphere, and that silica you cannot use further. So ऐसा हुआ है, and that silica gel is completely activity has been lost. Okay, so we will continue our discussion for this chromatographic techniques for from this onwards, and let us restrict ourselves up to this. Okay, so thank you everyone. Thank you so much.